Welcome to the Top 14 Round 16 preview. It's a fascinating round. We've had 2 weeks off for the Six Nations, so complete rest for a lot of the players. It feels like ages since we had a Top 14 game, and because of the Champions Cup, we've actually only had one game since the first weekend of January, so only 2 games since the turn of the year. This round is an interesting one because of the Doublons, as they are called in France, so where they overlap with the international periods, meaning that some teams have got players missing, some players have had limited time with some of their players because they've been away with the France squad, and other teams just don't lose anyone and are actually pretty strong around this time. Good example of this. The first game of the round is a really interesting one in the context of the Doublons, the international period, because we have Bayonne, who miss absolutely nobody to the France squad. Tavita Tafi was in the squad. He's actually been released since for the Italy game, whereas Bordeaux, we know now, lose a whole host of players to the France squad. So that's Jalibert, of course, Penaud, Bielbiaré, Moafana. So that's a lot of their backline unavailable. They do have Maxime Lucu available. They do have Nicolas Deporter available. And I feel like they've actually built their kind of squad around the Doublons and around these times, because you look at the signings they made over the summer: Johnny Gray, Joey Carberry, Lockie Swinton, Rohan Jansi van Rensburg. They're all guys that should be available in the Doublons kind of when they are missing loads of these France players. So they've got a pretty strong side out. And also you've got guys like Timo Mathieu and Marco Gazzotti, who we think are really, really impressive young players, should be pressing for a case in that bench spot to make that French back row bench and back row more dynamic. Where are these two teams at? Well, Bayern have actually lost their last two top 14 games. So despite the fact they're in fourth, they've not been in great form in the league. They are unbeaten at Stade Jean Daugé. That's 7 wins from 7 at home this season. That includes San Sebastian. But their only one attacking bonus point at home was that game in San Sebastian. So that's an interesting one. And actually, UBB did beat Bayonne at Stade Jean Daugé last season. Bayonne were in a real rut then. They were threatened with relegation. They're a completely different side now, with a brilliant centre pairing of Manu Tuolangi and Sorelli Mangala. They should both be available. Feels like there's some really real positivity around the club. Bordeaux, it's fascinating to see what that side how that side is going to go. Loads of players that should be pushing for places in France. Cyril Cazot's back from injury. We really, really rate him. He should be looking to get into that France squad. And it'd be interesting because Bayonne play a kind of physical upfront pack game but they're building that running rugby with Lopez dictating them around the pitch. It could be a fascinating game. Could be a really, really interesting game. Rich is going for Bayonne. He's backing the home record at Stade Jean Daugé. Does seem kind of unthinkable at the moment that they would lose at Stade Jean Daugé, but I just got a hunch for Bordeaux, and they did. It's not going to hold too many fears for them because of that win away there last season. I'm going for Bordeaux. What do you guys think? Stade Francais v Pau is an absolutely huge game in the context of both these sides' seasons. They currently sit 13th and 10th. They are separated by only 5 points. Stade Francais are 13th. They are second bottom, which is way, way below where they should be. I think they've got the second or third highest budget in the league. They're actually pushing the salary cap and may be in breach if they sign. Well, potentially could be a breach at some point. So they should be doing way, way better. Paul Gustard, they haven't had that uptick under him. They've not shown the kind of cohesion that we saw last season with Laurent Abbey and Paul Gustard and Karim Ghazal. Karim Ghazal's left. They've not actually had an uptick since he left, despite the kind of chat of disruption in the changing room and kind of him being very unpopular with the players. They have got a slightly more settled side. They've got that 3/4 line of March and Jeremy Ward and Delbois. That's working well. Brad Webber's playing really well at 9. He's been linking with Carbonell, who's not playing. Leo Barre is back from concussion. He's a player to really watch out for because he comes into the spotlight. Given the Romain Ntamack suspension, will France revert to Ramos at 10 and Leo Barre at 15? It's an option. That's kind of why Jalibert started, because Barre and Buros weren't available last weekend. So Yeah, I mean, but the thing is, Stade are not in good form. There's 3 defeats in a row in the top 14 and only 1 win in 5, which was that extraordinary game against Northampton where after the first half an hour they were suddenly the best team on the planet. They come up against a Po side who are up and down. They are 50% record in their last 6 top 14 games, which goes win loss win loss win loss win loss. If you go back, that also is mirrored in the Challenge Cup. So they're up and down. They're capable of wins, but they can't really string them together. They've got a second worst away record in the league. Ironically, the worst away record in the league is Stad, and they're winless. Only 2 losing bonus points in 7 games. But they did get one in their last away game at Cast. In 10th, they're sitting pretty precariously. They kind of need wins. They've got 3 key fixtures in the next 3 weeks. They play Perpignan at home next week, and then they're away to Racing. So the 3 teams directly below them in these 3 fixtures. The good news for them is that they get all 3 of their international players back. So Atis Ogbe obviously didn't play last week for France. He's available. Hugo Orodou has got released, as has Emilien Gaeton, who was on the bench but didn't come on last week against England. Gaeton and Atis Ogbe together are brilliant. They are so key to them. They've played so many games last year to keep them up, and they're the biggest attacking threats. They are their 2 biggest try scorers generally, and I think Maddox is up there in terms of the league stats, but those guys are key, and Orodou as well. I know he's not the biggest, and Po do lack that physicality, which is where Stade Francais could have the upper hand because of the physicality they've got in their pack. But Orodou is a guy, he's a French international for a reason. He's not quite ready in our eyes, but he is a very talented player. He does a load of work around the park, gets involved in all the dirty stuff, and is a brilliant line-out operator, which is also pretty key against Stade Francais. Interesting game, could go either way. I'm ashamed this one isn't the televised game. I think this one would be a better option for Premier Sports generally of the fixtures. Rich is going for Stade Francais. Po's home record is dreadful. They've not won away in the top 14 since last February, so nearly 12 months, I think. I am going for Po. I'm backing my boys. I think a little bit of form. I think Stade Francais are just in a bit of a mess, and I think Po are building again with players coming back from injury. Becca Goulgadze is going to be available. That's pretty key. I'm going for Po. What do you guys think? So Lyon v La Rochelle is the live game on Premier Sports on Saturday afternoon on the app. It's a strange one to put on TV because a lot of stars are missing from both teams. So obviously Aldrit, Jegu, Antonio, Boudon are missing from La Rochelle, but also from Lyon they miss Niniashvili, Saganadze in the back row, who's obviously not a star, but he's a very good player. Monty Ioane, I think, is unavailable due to injury or suspension, one of those. So, yeah, it's a bit of a shame. There's not riding on the kind of individual, not loads riding on the individual matchup either. Plenty riding on it if there's a defeat for La Rochelle, because that could see them drop out of the barrage spots. But even Lyon are kind of in a bit of, they've actually had a pretty good run of form, and that's put them in kind of no man's land, really. They're kind of 6 points behind La Rochelle in the barrage spot, and they're 6 points clear of Stade Francais in 13th place. So they're kind of exactly between the barrage and the access match. But they were kind of bottom a few weeks back. They've had 2 wins and 2 draws in the last 4 top 14 games. Kind of easy to forget that. It kind of shocked me that they had that. We were actually at the game that they won away at Bordeaux as well, which was a brilliant performance. They completely shut down Bordeaux, and it kind of feels like they are building again. It's just such a weird side because they've got so many talented players. Sometimes they can be dreadful. Sometimes they can look kind of really competent. And they've not actually lost in the top 14 since the end of November away at Po, and they've only lost to Connacht away in that time. So they have kind of started to piece it together. Mikel Guillard is going to be available for them. He's back from the France squad. We both think, Rich and I, that he should really be in that France squad. We think he should be starting alongside Manu Miafu. But he could be key. His physicality will be key, especially with La Rochelle missing a few physical players. La Rochelle have been patchy. They lost last time out at Toulon with a weakened side, a load of youngsters, 4 defeats in their last 6 in the league. And those wins, those 2 wins out those last 6, with scraping home against the kids of Toulouse at home And the home game against Clermont had so many chances to win that and should really have won it. They also lost both their Champions Cup games in January. Appreciate one was against Leinster, but it was at home. Their away record is poor, has been for a couple of seasons. And I just think, can they the main thing for them is, can they show any form away from home? Can they show any consistency? We don't really think so. We think Lyon are pretty good, in a pretty good place at the moment. They've had a real turnaround since Karim Ghazal came in, so we are both going for Lyon in that one. What do you guys think, though? Racing v Van, well, there are storylines everywhere in this one. There's a huge chance for Van to get a win against a struggling side. Racing need to win this game. They've sacked Stuart Lancaster off the back of those 6 defeats in a row, or 6 winless games in a row, sorry. They've brought in the big Sam of the top 14, Patrice Calazzo. If they lose this, we know that they are in real disaster zone territory. And they could be really staring down the barrel of a relegation battle. But Van are bottom. They're 4 points behind 13th. They're only 6 points behind Racing, so they can't overtake Racing if they win. But they could claw themselves out of that bottom spot. Racing, well, as I said, winless in their last 6 games. They've not won in the top 14. That is. They've not won in the top 14 since the first weekend of November away at Po, which is, I know there's been quite a lot of games for Europe and break weeks, but that is an extraordinary stat. They've actually got the 13th best home record in the league as well, so that's not very good. And it's 3 wins from 7 games. At La Défense, they now have 1 win, 1 draw, and 1 loss in their 3 games. So they can't even use the fact that their home record is so bad on the fact they had to play at Créteil, because they've now had 3 games of their 7 at La Défense, and they've only won 1 of those. So they really need this new manager bounce. Otherwise, they are spiralling downwards. The key players for them, is Owen Farrell fit? Is he he might be available, but is he fit? Is he playing properly at the top of his game? We spoke about it on the podcast a few weeks back. He looks like he's really struggling. Clovis Labai, his partnership with Farrell is going to be really key. He actually played pretty well against Cast, I thought. Le Garrec has been held back by the France squad, so the performance of Labai to come in for Nolan Le Garrec is really key, because Le Garrec is just such a key player. Van, it feels like I haven't seen or heard of them for a while. Their last game in the top 14, they got a win, a key result at home to the other Parisians, Stade Francais. 3 pretty rubbish defeats before that. They lost at home to Bayonne and Clermont, and they had that heavy defeat in the middle of those away at Po, a kind of a relegation rival, I guess. They will have had a lot of rest. 2 weeks off. They also rested a few players over the Challenge Cup period, and they would have needed it. The guys like Vunipola, Gorison, Pedemonte, so they're international players. Saili, Rayasi, those guys have played a lot, and they pinned a lot on their form. The reverse fixture back in October, Van lost 24-27 at home to Racing. It was a pretty tight game. They will want revenge, but we are going for Racing. We do think there will be a new manager bounce under Calazzo. We do think they should be turning around their form. They've still got so much star power in that back line, in that whole squad, really. So we are backing Racing in that one. But it's an interesting one down at the bottom of the table. Let us know what you think. Perpignan v Cast. Well, we were at this reverse fixture back in September, in which Perpignan really struggled with the physicality and kind of getting over the gain line. And that was with Basolo Tuolangi and Jaco Tonda, who've been injured pretty much since then. They're a slightly stronger side now with their Argentinians back. But they take on a Cast side in the middle of a new manager bounce under Xavier Saldoni. They've played some great rugby since he came in, no matter what side they've put out. They won away at Racing recently. They had that first away win in Europe for blooming ages against Saracens. They thrashed the Bulls. So and 2 wins in their last 2 top 14 games, or 4 wins out of 4, I think it is now. Last round of the top 14 was their first away win in the season, though, at Racing. And given the state Racing have been in, that's kind of hard to read into that. And they go to Stade Émile Giral, which isn't quite the fortress it was last year. But actually, they've only lost 1 game in the league at Émile Giral. So they are 6 wins in 8 home games, but one of those was at Béziers. And interestingly, you got to look at their stats. They've only conceded 9 tries in 8 home games. And if you think 7 of those are at Émile Giral, that's 7 tries conceded in 7 games at Stade Émile Giral. That is amazing. But they have only scored 16 tries in their 8 home games. So they've been pretty low scoring games down in Perpignan. You would say historically it would be a tight game on that basis. Cast historically have played really tight rugby, but under Sidorni they've been playing brilliant running rugby no matter what team they've put out. So it could be carnage. Perpignan, we've seen the team, they've got their first choice front row. That is key of Berrier, Ruiz and Brooks. Tommy Allen is available and starts at 10. His goal kicking could be absolutely critical up against a guy whose goal kicking will also be critical in Louis Lebrun. He can blow hot or cold. Tommy Allen is up there with some of the best in the world at the moment in terms of goal kicking consistency, I would say, and range as well. Lebrun has great range but can blow hot or cold. So if they get him on a good day or a bad day, who knows? But it's going to be an interesting one. Could be carnage this game. Rich is backing his boys Cast, because Perpignan haven't been that impressive at home. I'm going for Perpignan. I think they've ground out results at home, and I'm backing them to do it again. Montpellier v Toulon isn't in Montpellier. It's actually in Béziers because Montpellier's pitch is in such a terrible state. And you might think kind of taking it away from home is a bad sign for Montpellier, but they're not a side that really relies on home support. And they've actually already played at the Stade Raoul Barrière in Béziers this season. They beat USAP there in a game that USAP moved to Béziers early in the season. So that's, you can't really read too much into the change of venue, sorry. And Montpellier kind of quietly on the rise. They've kind of been slipping under the radar generally. They've seemed to I think they were the best team in the Challenge Cup. They seem to have worked out a formula that's working. The selection lottery of the early rounds has settled down. They had 3 wins in the top 14 before that loss away at Toulouse in the last round. They are in 8th, but they're only 5 points behind Bayonne in 4th, so a win could see them jump into the barrage spots for the first time in a long, long time. And it's a pretty interesting storyline because they've signed Hugo Royce in the last couple of weeks. He has to wait for his debut off the bench because they have gone with Hogg. Hogg has been playing 10 and playing really well. They finally built a bit of consistency at 10, choosing him and largely going with Reinach, who does start. That's the kind of... They're settled. I like the fact they've settled down this side and they seem to know what their best side is. And their approach is big physical pack and long-range kicking of those 2 halfbacks. It seems to be working. Toulon, on the other hand, have a huge physical pack as well. And it seems like they're actually they're not that far off those top 2 sides. It feels like they are 3rd, but they're only 3 points behind Bordeaux and Toulouse. So there's plenty of... they've got a lot of star power themselves. They could actually end the round top of the table if they get a win. That's absolutely fascinating. They don't lose too many players for the France squad. They've got a couple of injuries with Jean-Baptiste Gross is missing for the France squad. They've got a couple of injuries with Charles Ollivon and Carl Sinclair, who are 2 brilliant players. They shouldn't miss Jean-Baptiste Gross that much because he's actually played as much for France as he has for Toulon this season. Priso has played loads and he is in such good form. He's really key for them in the physical battle up against whoever the tight head they choose for Montpellier. Generally, they've got some couple of really strong tight heads. Ribbons will be key as well in the second row, his physicality. But the key man, as always for Toulon, is Saran. The fact he hasn't been playing for France, the fact he's had a bit of rest is brilliant news for them. He should play and he's key for them. Rich thinks Toulon are here to stay. He really, really rates them as certainly the next best side behind Bordeaux and Toulouse. He's going for them. I'm going for Montpellier. I think the move of venue doesn't affect them. I think they're settled. They're in good form. It's going to be a really, really big physical game. Could be a properly good game Saturday night under the lights at the Raoul Barrière, which is an amazing looking stadium. But let us know what you think. Could go either way. So get in touch with your views. Clermont v Toulouse rounds off the weekend. So it's an interesting one because Clermont lose absolutely nobody for the Six Nations. Toulouse are missing 9 players held back because for the Six Nations by France, and 10 if you include Roman Entamac, who's obviously unavailable. The break kind of came at a good time for Clermont as well. They were just starting to stutter in the league. Their good form petered out. 3 defeats in the last 4 in the league. They got that win against Bristol, but obviously they lost away at Leinster, so that's 2 wins in their last 6. And that win in the top 14, they scraped by a point away at bottom side Van. They lost at Po last time out, and that's a team they should be doing well against. Their game plan is well suited to playing against Po. And actually, also, they lost their last home game to Montpellier, which ruined their impeccable home record. They had only had one game where they hadn't gotten a bonus point win. So they are still 29 points from a possible 35 at home. That's still a formidable record. I think the break's come at a good time for them. They'll be stronger for this. They will have had some time together. Against a side who won't have had time together, Toulouse, we know that their coaching is great. They're really in sync. But who knows what side they're going to put out with 10 players missing. They're not going to have the physicality we expect because they're missing a load of forwards. And they haven't actually won either of their last 2 away games. They drew away at Lyon and then they lost with that last-minute defeat away at La Rochelle with the kids. Hard to know what to read into those games, to be honest. They do still have the best away record in the league. 4 wins and a draw in 8 games is pretty impressive. It's kind of key. The key players are those internationals, the guys like Malia. He's so key at these times because he can play. He can slot in at 10. He's a brilliant player, and he keeps that synchronisation. Him and Aki with Paul Grau. That's the kind of cornerstone of that team, and they can drive the direction of it. Josh Brennan, another player to keep an eye on. He'll be looking to press his France selection credentials this week. Saw some really interesting stats actually during the week, comparing his work around the park to Hugo Oredu. He kind of outdid him in every area, to be honest. He would appear to be one of the form locks in the league, and it's that's another fascinating kind of storyline in this game. Can Josh Brennan press his case? Should he be starting? A few people do think he should be starting in that France squad. Clermont, though, they do have, and he'll need to stand up against Clermont because Clermont are really direct with that big physical pack, which might be useful against this Toulouse side because we know that they're going to be missing a load of their physicality. We don't know what the Toulouse side is going to look like, but we know it's not going to be as powerful as usual. I am going for Clermont on that basis. Rich is going for Toulouse. He just thinks the coaching and the structures, and we saw how good the team were away at La Rochelle. He thinks that is good, and he's thinking Clermont have been a bit rubbish. But Clermont are the sort of side that as soon as you think they're rubbish, they just turn it around. But a really interesting one to close off the round Sunday night. Let us know what you think. Feels quite home winsy, which it generally is during the Doublons, because you kind of teams just lose a little bit of that depth if they've got players missing for the Six Nations. Rich has gone for a couple of away wins. I've gone for a couple of away wins. What do you guys think? Are there going to be any away wins this week? Who is going to be top at the end of this week? Who's going to be bottom at the end of this week? Who's going to be the barrage? It's fascinating. It's all to play for. Get in touch. Give us a like. Give us a subscribe. Listen to the podcast on Monday, which will be out on next week, Tuesday probably, to find out our debrief on this round of fixtures. But yeah, let us know what you think.